This film piece will be documenting the story of my mother. She is half Interior Salish and half Scottish descent and identifies as a First Nations person. Her father was Scottish and her mother was Interior Salish from the interior coast of British Columbia. She was the second youngest of 8 children, and when she was 2 years old, her father killed her mother. As a result of the social climate towards First Nations people at the time, because my mother and her 2 sisters were half white, and presumably due to the brutality of the murder, the remaining family decided it best to put the 3 girls up for adoption. My mother thereby became part of the 1960 scoop. Today, she is still trying to regain her identity by reinserting herself into First Nations culture and has begun to heal some of the deep wounds she has suffered so long ago. So here we are. We're in Montreal. It's March 17th, 2016. We're in Cabot Square. I'm sitting on the monument to the explorer John Cabot. This park was opened in 1870, and yeah, there's a lot of homeless people and First Nations homeless people that hang out here because there's like a very high Inuit population that comes down, and I guess they're in search of a better life, and they end up here because the Inuit homeless shelter is not too far from here, and my mom lives just like down the way at Anne's house. It's a women's housing unit. There's 30 units there. She's been there since October, and she kind of had. She'd kind of been unofficially homeless for the last 3 years, so it's really great. I think she's happy. She's very happy there. She's closer to her community, and there's a community of women she has, and it's a support system for her, and I'm really happy for her that she's there. And it's cool because it's close. She's close to downtown. We're right next to Atwater, and it's right next to Concordia, where I go to school. We're about to go see my mom, and yeah, we're gonna go talk to her about her experience being in the 60s scoop.
My name is Brenda Lee Marcoux. I'm 54 years of age. I was born in Lillooet, British Columbia on March 28, 1961. I was part of the 1960s scoop. This is the story of my adoption. I was adopted in Lillooet, British Columbia, and we were already in foster care when it happened. It happened because my father killed my mother, and my mother had already had 8 kids previous to me. There was, do I name them? Doesn't matter.
If you want to name them.
There's Amos, Butch, Percy, Gwen, Marilyn, Barb, and Deb. Those were Sandy Bob's children with Celestine Bob, our mother. And then there was Carol, Brenda, and Monica with David McMartin and Celestine, Alec. Monica was the youngest, and she was placed first, and it happened because my mother my adopted mother had been raped when she was younger, and she had had a little girl, and all she knew was that it was a little girl with black hair. And so later on in life, they were at church, I believe, and somebody mentioned to them that there was a little girl up for adoption, and she found out it was a little girl with dark hair. So I guess that's when they took Monica. And my adopted father was stationed in Kamloops at the time, and that's how we ended up going from Kamloops or out west to out east, because he was stationed in the Air Force at Kamloops, and they were transferred back to the St. Hubert Air Force Base because they came from here. They came from Quebec.
Okay. And he was English, eh?
He was English. I believe my father was born in Toronto, and he spoke English, but he spoke French with my mother.
Okay.
And at home we all spoke English with our father and French with our mother. So there was a lot of, English and French going on all over the place. We spoke back and forth in English and French. It happened kind of like this. My adopted sister Chrissy was in the park one day, and she had Monica in a stroller. And she happened to bump into Carol, and Carol started an argument with Chrissy saying that was my little sister, and Chrissy was like, no, this is my little sister. Anyway, so Chrissy went home to her mother and told her, this little girl in the park, blah, blah, blah. So that's how they found out that there was two other siblings. I guess they went back to the church, and they found out she had two other sisters. So they went home and they took a vote. They had 5 kids previously to this. They took a vote, and the kids all voted that they should take all 3 of us. So that's how we ended up all together, luckily. So we grew up on the South Shore of Montreal, and we went to English school. All the kids around in our neighborhood were French, so we learned a lot of French really quickly. We were mixed race, and I remember being really little, and people would kind of question us at school more than at home or anything. It was never really acknowledged that we were, well, not acknowledged, but it was never really talked about. Like, I can remember my sister Edith one time saying to me, oh, you're so lucky, when you grow up you won't have to wear eyeliner. You know what I mean? Like, it was weird, but that's kind of the only way it was ever brought up, was kind of like that. We were lucky to have a good life, but it wasn't always easy. Emotionally, for me, it was really hard. I can remember from a really young age being, I think, depressed, and I just remember crying all the time and not being able to let it out. I couldn't talk to anybody, didn't matter who it was, and it didn't matter how much they tried, I couldn't do it.
That's right, guys.
I had gone to Calgary to babysit Markian and Kurt because Chrissy and Brian were moving back to Montreal, and they had to come and look for a house. So they went to Montreal and I went to Calgary. And when they came back, they brought it up. I was stunned and amazed. I didn't expect it. They suggested that since I was this far west, I should just hop on a bus. It's a 24-hour bus ride, and go meet my family for the first time.
And how old were you when that happened?
Oh God, I don't even know. I was maybe 20.
Wow. Okay. So you're gonna go back.
I might have been younger than that.
So go back to meet
my biological family.
Okay.
Brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles.
And had you had contact with them previous to this, or?
I must have had contact. I don't remember exactly, but I must have, because I remember knowing them and calling them and telling them I was in Cache Creek, and they were like, oh my God, So I took the bus from Calgary. It was a 24-hour bus ride, and I remember the bus ride more than anything because I had to go through Rogers Pass. I don't know if you guys know about this, but Rogers Pass is like kind of like a highway in the middle of the hills, the Rocky Mountains, whatever. And there was a lot of like animals and avalanches and stuff like that, and I had never been through anything like that. Anyway, so 24 hours later, I landed in a place called Cache Creek. And I called my family, and it was, I guess it was, like I was anxious and I couldn't wait to see them, and it seemed like a long time. So I kept calling, I forget whose house it was, Amos or Butch's house, and saying, are they coming? Are they coming? And they were like, yeah, well, they left a while ago. They're on their way. They're on their way. And then when they got there, I remember being like, oh my God, it was kind of overwhelming to see people that were my family and that looked like me, and like, it was awkward, but it was really cool, like to see your real family for the first time,
Yeah.
and they were absolutely overjoyed. And I remember there was 4 of us, and we were in a pickup truck, and so in a pickup truck there's only room for 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
So Butch had to sit on my lap all the way back to Lillooet. That was hysterical. Poor Butch. That was really funny.
Wow.
I remember meeting I went to meet my grandmother. I'd never met my mother, obviously. And I went back to Lillooet to meet my grandmother. And I remember meeting her and falling to my knees and being completely overwhelmed and crying and just hugging her, falling in her lap and hugging her, and like, oh my God, like it was really surreal for me. And I remember that night or the next night, I was invited over there, and everybody came with me, and my grandmother had hired drummers to drum for me the first time, and I still remember the beat, feeling the drum in my frame, like in my bones.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just amazing. I've always loved that, and that memory for me is like amazing.
Yeah.
It meant that I really was a Native person, like it wasn't a dream. This was real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it made me really proud, and I'll never forget that moment. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's crazy. And now, now that you've had your own family and you've been through a lot in your life, obviously, like, you're still trying to reconnect with your roots.
I am.
So.
I find that ever since I stayed at the Native Women's Shelter, I've met many women of many different Native cultures, and I've learned a lot from all of them. I went to healing retreats with Kate,
Mm-hmm.
your sister, and we did the Sweat Lodge together. I really love doing talking circles. I smudge now. I've really learned a lot about our culture, and it just seems like I'm at home
Mm-hmm.
in that world more than I ever was in the non-Native culture.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm at home, and I feel like it's really who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I feel found again, kind of, like I feel, what's the word I'm looking for, like authentic.
Okay.
This is the authentic me, and that's what was missing, you know what I mean? That's the part that was missing, and I think that's why I was always so sad and shy and scared when I was a little girl. I think that had a lot to do with it, because I probably, in my heart, carried all that with me, and then it was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So to me, it seemed like, someone had chopped my head off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now, when I think of it, I really think it was meant to be that I went to the Native Women's Shelter, and I discovered all those Native women and their families and all the different cultures, and just everything I learned there was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel whole.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I learned there, I've tried to pass on to you and Kate, so that you can pass on whatever I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
The little things I've learned, and hopefully one day we'll end up back in Lillooet, you and me and Kate,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll have gone full circle then,
Yeah.
That would be my dream,
Okay.
to go back to Lillooet with you guys and get you to see where you come from, where I should have been,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's it. Like, go see your grandmother's grave, your great-grandmother's grave, like, I remember those things, going back there and going to the graveyard and seeing that, like, it's real. This is my mother. This is my mother, and this is my grandmother, you know, and this is where I'm from. This is really who I am, you know, so it just made me feel more like myself, more than I ever did before.
Okay.
Yeah. That was good, I must say.